Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today's journey through the Starmap, we're actually going to be stopping off at what has to be one of the weirder systems in space, and that's Nemo. Nemo was officially discovered back in 2364 by Daiho Ochoa. However, this date seems to be a little bit in question, as there are rumors that he actually discovered this system 2 years prior to that. Now, like Dayan, who we talked about in the Banshee video, Ochoa was working for, in the Fora system, as a security contractor for a terraforming company, and while doing a patrol run, he suddenly vanished. Now, this ended up getting the attention of his coworkers, who ended up rushing out to his aid, but before they reached his location, he popped back up on their sensors. Now, immediately following this event, Ochoa ended up quitting his job without any explanation and without turning in his last day's flight logs. And while that probably should have raised some alarms and eyebrows within the company, they ended up being a little bit distracted because they ended up screwing up their job terraforming Fora 3. Now, after this, Ochoa ended up becoming a founding partner of Nemo Co., along with Norman, Ellis, and Mao, giving the name Nemo, which gave the company its name based on Ochoa's discovery. They all decided to name it within that company's rights. Now, Nemo Co. took advantage of Ochoa's findings and wanted to get into the terraforming business, and they had the perfect opportunity to make that happen when Ochoa's old company, Tadmor, was stuck in a legal battle based on that failed terraforming of Fora 3. So they needed to raise capital, which they did by selling their terraforming equipment to Nemo Co. at a very steep discount. Nemo Co. made the claim that they were going to have to end up eating the cost of disassembly to get it through the medium jump points that were available in the system, negotiating that price down even further. However, after making that purchase, Nemo Co. announced that they had found a large enough jump point for any ship or platform, which of course led to Nemo. Now, while Nemo Co. played this move close to their chest, a miracle they claimed, Tadmor knew that they had just been swindled. Tadmor remembered that Ochoa had worked for them years before, and upon digging through their files, they finally discovered that Ochoa had quit after a weird event, and they had never really gotten the nav computer out of his craft. So they ended up taking Nemo Co. to court. But all this time, and all they really had was circumstantial evidence and claims. And when Ochoa was questioned about the discovery and where the nav computer was, he just had to say that he sold his Aurora and has no idea where it ended up. Tadmor tried to track it down, but ended up coming up short, and with nothing to prove anything, the case eventually was dropped. And all during this time, Nemo Co. went to work terraforming the system to try and make what they could out of this system orbiting the F-type star, of course being Nemo. Nemo 1's a small proto-planet without any real resources to make it a worthwhile planet. However, a company called Microprobe got people's hopes up very early on by saying that there was a lot of valuable assets here, which turned out to be incredibly false. But thankfully, people did their due diligence and did their own scans before getting too into it, and nobody ended up really wasting a lot of time here. It's just kind of another example of a weird mistake in this history of this system. Nemo 2 had been pummeled by meteors for its entirety of its life, which means that it's got this crater-covered surface. Now, outside of being interesting to look at, the meteor strikes have exposed the planet's minerals and resources, which means that there's a lot of claims to conduct mining operations on this planet. Nemo 3, known as Ergo, is where most of the interesting historical events in this system have taken place. And after terraforming was completed on this ocean world, Nemo Co. made this planet their home planet. And during this process, they found out that there were vast amounts of oil reserves under the surface, which led them to creating massive oil rigs that they created from their old terraforming platforms. And they really went to work on trying to get at that oil. And while the oil pockets were very large, they were a limited resource. And when they started getting tapped out, the oil rigs that they had built were converted into more civilian-type establishments with shops and restaurants, not only for visitors, but for the workers who were here on their contracts. Now, there's even a good portion of the workers who decided to stay here and try and make a new life. And one of the primary reasons people know about this system is a whale. And no, not one that lives in the waters of Ergo, but an asteroid that's orbiting around Ergo, which has become known as the space whale. Now, this has become a huge tourist destination, okay, really more of a tourist trap, but it's basically an asteroid that is oblong and it's wide on one side and narrow on the other, giving the appearance of a long, slender whale from the oceans of Earth. Most people came here knowing that there really isn't a whale in space, but more for the experience and for the shops that are on the surface of the planet. And getting back to the surface of Ergo, there's a sort of mystery that hasn't really been solved yet, and that's about the oil we mentioned before. Oil, as far as we know, is the breakdown of biological life. But since we've been in this system, there's been no signs of life here, including a weird lack of fossils despite searches for just that. Chances are that there was some big cataclysmic event that wiped life out on this planet and all evidence of that life, but there's no evidence to prove it at this point either. And despite these searches, people still have this weird thought that there's life that can be found here, but that may be based on the whale floating in orbit around the planet. We don't really know. The good news is, though, you can swim here in the beautiful oceans without fear of being attacked by space sharks. So there you have it. That's the Nemo system. A weird little place with a mixed history and just full of misconceptions. So who's going to want to end up coming to Nemo in the game? Well, I think there's some jobs that stick out to me, including people with prospectors who want to take out a contract to mine out on Nemo too. I also think that with this being a tourist destination, those of you with caterpillars, merchantmen, or other ships that are capable of becoming a shop may find value in selling goods at a premium to tourists. With no gas giants here, refueling's probably going to be a challenge, so I think Starfarer pilots could probably fill up, people's ships before they end up leaving to go back home. I also think that, well, I guess I should say I don't really get the impression that there's going to be much manufacturing in this system, so this system's likely going to be fairly dependent on transporters to bring goods into the economy, so whole series pilots, freelancers, connies, it shouldn't really matter. If you're capable of carrying cargo, there's probably going to be a lot of people here that are ready to buy your goods. And finally, tourists, transporters, and not a lot of mention to security. I think this is probably going to be a hotbed for pirates, especially if you want to try and escape through Banu space through the Corel system, which would be better for hiding. Overall, it's an interesting system with enough possibilities to make it a good destination for a lot of different people. But if you have questions or thoughts about other jobs that could be done here, toss them in the comments. Otherwise, stay tuned for a whole lot more coming soon. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.